When little Queenie Buxton goes to the British Empire exhibition at Wembley, she comes back, stands in front of her class and announces, "I went to Africa when it came to Wembley." Her teacher dismisses her as silly, and the older Queenie, narrating this incident, offers the anecdote in a self-deprecatory way, but perhaps there's an element of truth to it. It's Queenie's first experience of anything other than white British culture, and she's shocked when she meets a black man who looked to be carved from melting chocolate. Her reactions range from childlike intrigue and fascination, blacker than when you smudge your face with a sooty cork, to stereotyped perceptions moulded by the prejudice so prevalent around her. A monkey man, this big N man. Perhaps this moment represents exposure to diversity. If so, it's very much on the British establishment's terms. The British Empire is laid out in miniature for all to see. The empire in little, Queenie says. Stereotypical representations of countries abound. Australia smelt of apples, Hong Kong smelt of drains, New Zealand is depicted by a sheep being sheared, and India by women brightly dressed in strange, long, colourful fabrics. Their representation is controlled by the British and serves to highlight the significance of the colonies to the mother country in economic terms through the products and trade links that can be exploited. The focus is on dominance and superiority, and the responses of the visitors are those of arrogance and ignorance. At the end of the prologue, when Queenie's father says, "See here, Queenie, look around, you've got the whole world at your feet, lass." To an extent, he's right. As a white British citizen, she has been born into a position of privilege and power. This isn't the last time the colonies will come to Britain, though. When immigrants from the Caribbean arrived temporarily during the Second World War, and then permanently in the subsequent years, maybe there's a sense in which the terms on which they come are just starting to change. No longer exhibits moulded and paraded by the colonial power, they come first as members of the armed forces, then as citizens invited to make a new home for themselves in a country on the brink of radical change in racial, gender and class terms. You could argue that there's a lot about moments of impact in Small Island, and it's often impact on Queenie. Think about the impact of the British Empire exhibition on Queenie, the impact of the outbreak of war on her relationship with Bernard and on her freedoms as a woman, the impact of her relationship with Michael on her life and the lives of those around her, the impact of Bernard's return. In comedic terms, a lot of these moments of impact involve an opening up, a moment of enlightenment, a realization of possibilities. But tragically, some of them entail a return to restriction and constraint, or a resignation to the realities of a prejudiced, intolerant and bigoted world. If you're writing about the impact of these moments on Queenie, don't forget that she's not just Queenie, she's Queenie Bly, she's Britain. The connotations of her name, with its links to Queen Victoria and Blighty, the slang name for Britain, mean that any representation of Queenie by Levy needs to be viewed as a potential representation of Britain itself. The prologue is all about exposure. Levy takes the opportunity to satirise those guilty of small-minded racist attitudes, mainly through her representation of Graham. She sets up the comic moment of his ridicule and humiliation through the arrogance of his statement. "She can't understand what I'm saying. They're not civilised. They only understand drums." He then manipulates the situation between the African man and Queenie by encouraging Queenie to kiss him. An abusively controlled manoeuvre on his part, designed to humiliate both the African man and the young girl. When he responds by articulately, in clear English, saying, "Perhaps we could shake hands instead," we're told that Graham's smile fell off his face. Graham is left mumbling and saying that he needs the toilet, eventually resorting to relieving himself behind some bins. Levy's juxtaposition of the civilised and dignified African, in contrast to the animalistic, ignorant Graham, is hilarious and serves as a marker of intent. The absurdities of prejudice will be exposed in this novel. Levy does not intend to hold back. Her focus is on exposing the small island mentalities of the ignorant British and the naive Jamaicans, the black American soldiers conditioned to unquestioningly accept segregation as the norm, and the British public in the aftermath of the war, fearful of any perceived threat to their established order or traditional culture.